Welcome to Mpowered Living. I'm Ann Sheu. On this podcast, innovative leaders and visionary experts share insights and practical tools for work, family, and marriage. Each episode, we'll explore how to elevate your life while staying grounded in what truly matters to you. You're working hard to navigate relationships, build a thriving family, and create a legacy of purpose. We're here to help you do that with confidence and intentionality. So if you're ready to live a life by design, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hey, Lesa, how are you? I'm excited to chat with you today.
I'm very excited to chat with you.
All right. Gosh, I can't wait for the listeners to hear about your story. Let's start kind of near the beginning where you made a decision to leave your career and stay home and homeschool your kids. I want to hear about how you made that decision and what it took to have the courage to do something so different.
Well, that's such a good question. I was a young mom in my second marriage, so we were a little bit of a blended family. And I had three children, two boys and a girl, and my oldest was in fifth grade. My middle child had just finished fourth grade, and my baby girl had just finished second grade. And we had been begging the school to hold him back for every year since kindergarten. He couldn't read. And I'm like begging them. And they're like, no, he'll catch up. He'll catch up. We get to fourth grade. He still can't read, but he's making A's and B's. And the school calls me in and says, we have to hold him back. And I said, so you want to take my ADD kid who's making A's and B's and tell him he has to repeat fourth grade? Now, when somebody getting up to sharpen their pencil is a 15-minute activity for him, he's going to be completely disengaged. What do I do?
Yeah.
And I'm very lucky. I had a principal who said, you know what, you're right. I actually think you might want to consider homeschooling your kids. And I'm like, what? No. I went to public school. I'm fine. And she said, okay, we'll just consider it, but we really don't have a choice. He can't read. He can't go to the fifth grade. So I was working for the Oklahoma State Regents for Higher Education. My husband and I were both full-time workers. I brought in just as much money as he did. And we started talking about maybe we do have to homeschool. Maybe that is his best chance. And so this was at the end of one school year, the beginning of the next. So I took the summer, I went to a homeschool convention and tried to figure out what this thing was. I didn't even know what it was. And could I do it? And I realized that, yes, I can. And this is what my child needs. I need to put my career aside for the moment because this is what we need. I was really lucky to fall in with some other homeschool moms who advised me very well and said, you have to do this for the right reason. It can't be for a negative reason. It has to be for a positive reason, because a negative reason won't be enough. When the school bus pulls up and you've been having a bad day, you are going to do everything you can not to throw that kid on the bus. And they were right, So that was really good advice for me. My husband and I spent some time. We're both very faith-based, so we spent some time in prayer, separately and together, and felt like we had gotten the answer that, yes, this is what we needed to do. Now, that meant a huge change for us. We were going to cut our family income in half in a matter of a month. And I wasn't prepared for that. So we had to sell a car, we had to cut back on expenses and figure out how we were going to make this budget work and buy all the homeschool stuff. So now I'm in charge of buying all the books and all the curriculum and figuring all of that out. We also made the decision if I was going to be all in. You already know this about me, Ann. I'm not a halfway kind of girl.
Yeah, it's definitely not.
All or nothing. And so I broke the news to my fifth grader. You're going to be homeschooled too. And my little girl didn't care. She was like, ooh, get to spend time with mom. So she was fine. But my fifth grader really fought against it, went to my mom and said, I'm just going to make her miserable and she'll put me back in school. And my mom said, I love my mom for this. She goes, then you don't know my daughter very well. And so he learned that we were going to do this. And if we were going to be miserable, we were just going to be miserable together because this is what we're doing. So we made that decision, and it was a lot to navigate. I ended up taking some part-time jobs at night to make more money for the family. But it was definitely the right thing. He learned to read in less than 6 months because he had the right tools in front of him. And it was very much a success. And we ended up homeschooling all 3 of our kids all the way through high school. Both of my boys went into the military service right out of high school. And my daughter actually, I found I had to advocate for my children a lot. My daughter decided she wanted to be a paramedic, and she wanted to start by being a nurse's aide. And she did all the work. And before she was 18, she was ready to take the test, and they didn't want her to because she wasn't 18. I convinced them to let her take it. What's the harm if she fails? She can just come back and take it when she's 18, but it gives her a good experience. She passed it with flying colors, and so they had to figure out how they were going to give her this certification when she wasn't even 18 yet. And she volunteered at hospitals, and she's now a field training officer for the local fire department that she works for.
It's incredible. Okay, so then you made a second shift in your career. You went back to work, you were helping run a business, and then you took this huge bet on yourself to leave that career and go become an entrepreneur and start your own business and become a business coach. So, I think there's a lot of people who are listening who probably have inklings of things that they might want to do. But what does it take to actually have the courage to make that first move? What was your thought process? What did you do to prepare yourself? What did you do to make sure that you were making the right decision?
Yeah, and that's such a good question again. I had been working at that tax and accounting firm as really the second in command. I was running the day-to-day, and I had done 14 tax seasons where I had given up my life really for 3 months out of every year. I worked 80 plus hours a week. And this was really a progressive decision. It didn't happen all at once. It started by me going to my husband and partner and said, I don't know if I have another tax season in me. And he said, well, quit. And I'm like, okay, have I ever been the stay-at-home mom? I mean, yeah, I homeschooled my kids, but I still ended up doing other jobs. So you know me better than that. And there's no kids here for me to homeschool. So what do you want me to do? And he said, well, do that coaching thing you keep talking about. I'm like, ooh, can I? So I started thinking, can I? And that's really the spark that started it. I decided personally that I needed more education under my belt. I had been on doing online classes, working towards my bachelor's degree, and I'm almost 50 years old by this time. And I decided that I looked into it and I realized that I could have my degree if I went to school full time for 2 consecutive semesters and I'd be done. So that was my master plan. I was going to finish my degree and then I was going to become a business coach. My degree was in business management with an entrepreneurial background. So I told my CEO that I didn't want the job anymore, which was really hard. I'd been there for a long time. And we were really good friends. We had homeschooled our kids together.
Wow.
We've known each other for a very long time. And here I am telling her I don't want me anymore. I want to start my own.
Yeah.
And luckily she is the right kind of friend and basically said, okay, how do we do this? And by the way, you're replacing yourself. I'm not doing it. So, which was the right answer. So we took about 6 months to find my replacement because I told her in May that I had till September when I started school full time. So May to September, they kept me on the payroll all the way till the Friday before I started school full time. even though I'd already replaced myself.
Yeah. Wow.
So they paid both of our salaries. That was just a gift that they gave to me. And I did exactly what I set out to do. I finished my degree. I graduated in the next April and decided to launch the business. And it was really because I felt like my husband had my back. It meant buying into a franchise, and we didn't have that kind of money. So he gave me the money out of his retirement. He said, "We'll take it out of my retirement. I need it back in 5 years because I'm going to retire." So that's been the master plan all along, and he's the one that really gave me the ability to do it. And he was my cheerleader in the background, as he has always been, to help me get there.
It's amazing. So I know now that you've got this incredible, thriving business coaching practice, but I also know that it wasn't always like that. So tell us about that struggle in those early years and what it took to get past that.
I had to dig deep for sure. I did this in June of 2019, right before the world decided to shut down for a pandemic. And I'm trying to do a new business where I have to be face to face with people. Or I thought I did. What I really learned is we can do a lot of things electronically and remotely. And it also made it really difficult to meet people. So as a business coach, you're trying to meet business owners and earn their trust so that you can help them in the next phase of themselves. That was really hard to do. And it also showed me that as much faith as I had in myself, that wasn't enough. I needed to learn some new skills, some new networking skills, some new electronic skills. I had to learn a lot of new skills. And that meant I had to be really resilient. I had to adopt a philosophy. Some days I'm going to win. Some days I'm going to learn. And today might be a winning day. Today might be a learning day. But either way, I've got to get myself out of bed and get to work. Taking on that philosophy really helped. But that doesn't mean I didn't feel lonely, because being a business owner, a solo business owner, can be a very lonely place to be. I was really lucky that in that franchise, I had a community of other people doing the same thing. And they reached out to me, they helped me, they gave me confidence to know that I was doing the right thing. And even when I messed up, they told me, "Okay, this was a learning day. What did you learn? What are you going to do different?" That's really how I'm wired. I don't stay in the depths of learning too long. I want to learn my lesson and move on. So I'm really lucky that I had people in my sphere that were helping me to do that. And honestly, Anne, I know I keep coming back to this, but it was my husband who was cheerleading me from the other room.
So beautiful. So I want to talk about your husband in a second, but before we shift away from this, your business coaching practice, I know you have one of the world's best accountability partners. Can you share with us a little bit about how you guys connected, decided that you guys were going to be accountability partners, and what you guys do? What is the practice that you guys have that helps keep each other accountable? Because I think it is so powerful.
We both read The Gap in the Gain at the same time, which is a really powerful book. I hope you put the link to it somewhere in these show notes. We both read it, and we both realized the power of setting intention for the next day and being accountable for what you did today. So we sent each other one text a day. And that text consisted of yesterday's goals that I told you I was going to do today. This is how many I actually did. And here's my intention for tomorrow. This is what I'm going to get done tomorrow. And we did that every day for almost 5 years. And there were days when I would do something simply because I didn't want to send my accountability partner a text saying I didn't do it. she can be mean. I'm sorry. And I
Those
didn't
are the
want
best
her to
kind of
know.
accountability partners.
I know. I didn't want her to know that I didn't do it. So there were times when, even if it was just a walking goal, that I would get out of my house at 9 o'clock at night and get my steps in because I can't tell her I didn't do it.
That's great. So, for the people that are craving that type of accountability, what would you tell them to go look for? Like, how did you find this person and know that she was going to be your person?
It's really about finding someone who is like minded, who sees the world similar. We don't always see it exactly the same. But my accountability partner, her name is Sherry, and she's amazing. And she and I do kind of see the world in the same way. So when I said I wanted accountability, she knew we had a common definition of what accountability looked like and what we wanted in an accountability partner. And it turns out that it was really pretty much the same thing. We were looking for someone who would pat us on the back or kick us in the pants when we needed it. And asking for permission to do that and asking for permission to receive that is really what set the stage for this to be such a powerful influence in getting the things done.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, let's shift because I want to talk about your husband because I've watched your journey over the years with this. And let's start by do you mind just sharing a little bit about what's going on with his health and where that's kind of leaving you guys right now?
Absolutely. We've always known this could be our journey. My husband has MCI, mild cognitive impairment, which generally means that his cognitive loss is not age related. He is 13 and a half years older than I am. So he's further along in his journey. But it's also not dementia yet, but we do know that that's the road we're on. And it's really important when this is the health challenge that you're facing, especially with medicine the way it is today. They're making new advances all the time. Unfortunately, the only medicines that are available, there is no cure, but the medicines that are available will slow the progression. So the sooner you get on them, sooner you recognize the symptoms and get the diagnosis, the sooner you can start slowing that progress. And the goal here is just to give them as many really good years as we possibly can. And I'm not the kind of person, you know this, I can't just wait for this storm to overtake me. I'm not good at that. I need to know what the problem is. I need to know what my steps are, and I need to know what my path looks like. I already know the path. He has a huge family history of dementia and Alzheimer's. We dealt with his mom and his sister and his uncle, all dealing with Alzheimer's. And so we've always known this. But as soon as I saw the symptoms, as soon as I saw the near term or short term memory starting to fade and I saw the symptoms, I started having conversations with him. And his biggest fear in our entire marriage, which is 37 years. In April, have been married for 38 years. So our entire marriage, he just didn't want to be a burden to me. He knew what the burden could look like because he dealt with his mom and his sister and his uncle. And so this is really a very fear-based conversation to have with him because he knows that if he gets this diagnosis, he knows what the path looks like. And he doesn't want to be a burden. That's his worst nightmare.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult, and I had to have these conversations really slowly with him. My goal in the beginning was just to get him to see it and be willing to say it out loud to a doctor. I didn't want to be the person to out him to his doctor. I felt like that ought to come from him if at all possible. So he did get to the place where we could do that. We saw a neurologist. We saw his regular doctor. He confirmed, yep, you need to go see a neurologist. So he gave us a really great neurologist. I looked at a couple of different ones and then chose this one. And he did all the right things. He gave us medicine right away, even before we had the diagnosis, so that I could feel like we're at least doing something right now. And he signed him up for all the diagnostic testing, which takes time, by the way. It doesn't happen overnight. One of those tests, it took us 6 months to get an appointment, let alone get the test. But now we have a full diagnosis and we can do some of these tests yearly so that we know how much cognitive loss we're having every year. And he has been incredibly brave through all of this. He's been willing to face it with me, and he's been willing to do all of the things that really scare the living daylights out of him, which I honor and am grateful for.
Yeah. How have you navigated the situation in a way where you haven't lost yourself? Like, how have you continued to be able to advocate for what you need?
That's a really good question, and that is an ever changing question day over day. Some days are really good, and our relationship is really good. Some days I am more of a caregiver than a wife. And that's really hard for me because he is my best friend. He is my partner. He's the person I go to when I don't know what to do. He's been my cheerleader. He has been the person pushing me to be the better me. And I'm losing that a little. So one of the things that I do is I have a hobby. It's quilting and embroidery. And I spend a dedicated amount of time just in that hobby. It helps me to be creative. It helps me to unwind. It helps me to get out of my own way sometimes because I can do that. So I dedicate time to that. And I set aside days where I actually leave the house and go. I have a friend who I go to her house and we set up and we sew all day long. We have at least 4 Saturdays a year that is what we are doing, and neither one of our husbands are going to get in the way of that. And so, in fact, her husband makes sure that he feeds us so that we eat while we're sewing. And my husband makes sure that my sewing machine makes it there, gets set up, and then he gets it home for me. So I don't even have to do any of the heavy lifting. So that's one of the things that I do. Another one of the things that I do is I like to travel. And we've had a bunch of trips that we've wanted to take together that was way down the road when I retire from being this business coach. We needed to move that up. And this year, we just got back in October, we went to Ireland together. And that unfortunately meant that it was not going to be the best, it wasn't going to be, not the best trip. It wasn't going to be exactly what we thought it was going to be because his health had declined a little bit. And it meant that we just had to make some adjustments. And we worked with the travel company to make sure that those adjustments could be accommodated. And we even had to take a trip in an ambulance to a hospital in Dublin, but we did that. And I advocated for him, he advocated for himself, and we were still able to enjoy the trip. So I've learned that it may not be perfect, but it will be our memories. And that's what I'm trying to give us. I need these memories as much as he does. There will be a day when he doesn't remember them, and I still need to be able to lean on those times.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to give us as much of that as I can humanly possibly fit in into our time together.
So for the listeners who might be experiencing something similar with their spouse or maybe a parent or a grandparent, early stages of dementia or Alzheimer's, or even, I mean, just health issues in general, right? What would you
it can take a lot of forms.
Yeah, what's your advice to them? What do you think are some of the most important things as they are starting this journey, helping their loved one navigate these health issues?
The first is be realistic and don't just shove it under a rug. Don't, oh, well, this will get better. Oh, well, this will get better. It may not. You may be on a road where it's just going to get worse. And you need to figure out how that's going to change your day to day in a way that is still honoring who you are and what you need. And that's going to be different for every person. But please just make sure you are recognizing the signs. When things are different than they normally are, ask questions, dig into it, don't ignore it. Ignoring it doesn't make it go away. And the longer you wait could actually mean less time.
Yeah. What's your advice for someone who has the loved one dealing with these health issues, but the loved one is in denial? They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to deal with it. I mean, I know in your situation, you were able to approach the conversation in a way that really helped. It seems like it helped bring your husband's guard down, right? So how do you think other people should approach these conversations? What's your advice to them if the person who has the problem is unwilling to deal with it?
Well, first I'm going to have you check your assumptions. Make sure it really is a problem. But if it really is a problem, then seek outside help. For whatever the issue is, believe me, there are plenty of groups of people out there that are dealing with the same issue. Find someone who can help you so that you can help them. Make sure that you're advocating and not taking over. Although someday you may have to take over. So do that with all the love that you have for this person. I try really, really hard to see my husband as the caregiver, cheerleader that he's always been, even if he's not being that right now. Because he has given me that gift. And he deserves the best that I can give him.
It's beautiful. What would you tell people about not losing themselves and like forgetting to be a friend or a wife or a spouse to their loved ones? Like whether it's somebody dealing with, their loved one has a health issue, or maybe it's a new mom who's now got a baby that they're taking care of and they're forgetting to be wives because they've put on this mother hat, or maybe they're starting a business and now they've put on this entrepreneur hat and they're forgetting to be moms or wives. Like when you have to juggle all these different hats, what's your advice there?
Well, what has worked for me? I can tell you what works for me. You're going to have to figure out what works for you, and it can be different. So just be open to the idea that what you need might be different than what I needed. But here's how I did it. I started a journaling practice every day where I am going to write down some things. First is, what's my major intention for today? And then the second is 3 things I'm grateful for. And it has to be 3 different things. I can't say the same thing, 3 things every day. It has to be different than what I have said in the. I'm starting to get where I'm repeating a few, but honestly, I do try to make it very different. Then one of the other things I do is I monitor my sleep, because I know me. I need a good 7 hours of sleep. And so I work hard. I'm a little bit of a sleep snob. At 9 o'clock, you can't text me because I'm starting to wind down and go to bed. And I know I need that to be the best me the next day. So I'm going to monitor my sleep. And I actually have some tools, some electronic tools that help me monitor that and give me like a sleep score. So there's lots of different ways to do that. I write that down every day, and I actually have a scorecard item, because I teach business owners and I tell them they have to have a scorecard. So one of my scorecard items is to have 83% overall for the week.
Nice.
I have to at least be that high.
For your sleep score.
I'm sorry, what?
For your sleep score.
For my sleep score, has to be 83% as an average over the week. And I also write down every day one thing I'm going to do just for me today. And that might mean sitting on the porch in the quiet in the morning. It doesn't have to be something big. It could be that I'm going to the gym today. That's what I need. I need to sweat a little, and get some aggression out or whatever. And it might be that I need to spend some time at my sewing machine today. So I write down at the beginning of the day the one thing I'm going to do for myself that day. And then, like I said, because I'm a business coach, I have some scorecard items that I keep track of. And I have a page a day. That's the first half of the page. At night, I debrief with myself. How'd I do? Did I hit the goals I said I was going to hit? Because, I don't want to tell Sherry I didn't. And then also, did I do everything I wanted or needed to do for myself today? And some of that might be, what did I need to learn today? And there are days, honestly, Anne, that what I needed to learn was patience.
Mm-hmm.
Patience with myself, patience with my husband, patience. And very often that's the lesson I'm learning. I keep having to learn that over and over again, but I'm really debriefing with myself and trying to be kind, not judgmental. I just need to see it. What's the lesson I can learn here? What's the gift in this? And move on. Yeah. And then set my intention for the next day. That's what I do.
Do you have a template that you use, or do you just use blank pages?
I do have a template. It's from a number of different things. But I just created myself a sheet that basically folded it in half of it long ways, half of it is morning, the other half is evening, and the things that I needed to write down.
Would you be able to share that with us?
Sure.
Love that.
Happy to, yeah.
Okay, so you've got so many interesting pieces of your life, but I want to talk about the crisis work that you do. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do? And then I want to talk about how that actually translates to like real world. How can people apply these ideas, these lessons into their life?
Absolutely. When I married my husband, he was an amateur radio operator. Some people call it a ham operator. And I didn't, this was long before cell phones. So I learned very quickly that if I got my license, that if I needed him to pick up milk on the way home, I could let him know. And so I felt like I had a real advantage because people didn't have phones in their pockets, let alone their cars at that time. So I did the work to get the license. It is an FCC license. And so at that time, you had to pass 2 tests. I had to pass a written test and a Morse code test to get my license. But as I've already learned, once I've decided I'm doing something, I'm pretty much doing it. So I did that. And that also meant that I had to learn how to create an antenna, because I went to my husband one day and I said, I don't understand how this connector and this wire, and how does that make an antenna? How does that mean I can talk to you? And he said, well, I need a new 40-meter antenna. You're building it. So he made me do that, and I learned. So now I know why all that wire connected makes an antenna. What I really learned after that, after I just used it to tell him to pick up milk on the way home, was that amateur radio is a source of communications when normal communications no longer work. So when a disaster happens and normal modes of communication, at that time it was regular phone lines would go down and you had no communications. Or even today, I live in Houston, if a hurricane hits, you can bet you're going to lose internet and cell phone at least for a period of time. And that's when amateur radio operators step in. We provide communications for emergency response so that they know who needs help. And we have this whole network where we can work together to help. We practice all year long with really fun things, like we provide communications for the 10 for Texas in the Woodlands, which is a race, a 10K race. And we provide communications for that so that we can practice our skills and make sure that we're ready when the disaster happens. And I love being able to do that. It makes me feel like I have a way to help when most of the time you feel helpless.
What do you think are some of the big lessons that you've learned from those situations where you've had to dive in to help? What are those lessons and how can people apply it to their lives?
We're all going to face emergencies. And the first thing is preparedness, both physical preparedness. Now, again, I live on the Gulf Coast, which means I have to be worried about hurricanes, but everybody lives in a part of the country where you need to be worried about something. So, physical preparedness, for me, that means that we have a generator, we have water, we have food, we have just the basic necessities, we have medical supplies so that we can really take care of ourselves in an emergency rather than hopefully nothing so bad happens that other people have to take care of you. But if it's just that you've lost power and your cell phone doesn't work, I can manage through that because I know what I need to do. So my first advice is know what the emergency is that you could face. You can't always know that, but if it's weather related, you can talk to your neighbors that have lived there for a long time and find out what they faced, what they learned, what they would do differently. And then the other way that you can help is really knowing who your neighbors are. We don't do that enough anymore. We get isolated. And I can tell you that I have a neighbor just on this side of me that when we had our last hurricane, she had a brand new baby. And we were out of power and it was really, really awful. And so what did we do? We had a generator. So I'm inviting the woman that I know has a brand new baby and should not be sitting in her house with no power into my home because I know them. We're friends. So be friends with your neighbors. I also know that the man across the street is an electrician. So if somebody in the neighborhood needs something, I know who to go to. So know your neighbors and be willing to know them well enough that you can help them when the time happens. These are really simple things we can do to be good stewards of what we have. Be willing to share it in an emergency and be willing to help others. First thing that happens when the power goes out in my neighborhood, my husband is walking up and down our street figuring out what people need. And we just don't do that enough anymore.
So, what do you think, like, what's next for you? Like, what are you working on? What's on the horizon?
Really, it is to continue building this practice. I love the teams I work with. I see the impact. And that's really important to me. I need to have a positive impact on others. It's my mission. And this role, this business that I have allows me to do that. And so I want to do this as long as humanly possible, which means I have a session room where I meet with my clients. I had to move it closer to my house. I can't be an hour and a half away from my husband. I need to be 20 minutes away from my husband. So we moved the session room. I am really, really lucky that my husband planned in advance to have money. We didn't spend all of our money. We were really careful. And he has a retirement fund that I honestly do believe will get us through his lifetime and his medical needs. I'm still able to work as long as possible. We've talked about and had those hard conversations. Do I quit work and stay home? Or is there a in between where we provide in-home care so that I can still get out and still do this life-altering work that I love to do for as long as I'm able to do it? So right now, what we're working on is what does our life look like for the next 10, 15 years? And really trying to figure out two paths. One path is he's good and he doesn't get worse. And so what does that path look like? And we do have to have a plan for another path. And so we're building that together now so that he can tell me what he wants. We're actually videotaping some of those conversations so that if he forgets, I can show it to him. It's not just me. It's his own voice telling him that's what you wanted. And being willing to understand that what he wants today may not be what he wants in 5 years. So always being open to change the plan if we have to, and being willing to, I teach my business owners they have to be willing to pivot.
Yeah.
So that means I have to be willing to do that too in my own life and on this journey that we're together. And it's really just to continue to have an impact on my community, on my family, and on individuals that I come across.
I love that. Tell us about what type of businesses you love working with. Like if somebody's listening and they're curious and they want to learn more, what type of industries, what type of clients do you like working with?
Well, industry is really not a part of this because honestly, I have worked with everything from an urgent care to a tree farm. So there's no commonality between those two industries other than they deal with living things. That's the only commonality. So really industry doesn't matter. Size does matter. It needs to be a business owner who has somewhere between 10 and 250 employees. It needs to be a private business, and that business owner needs to be open-minded, growth-oriented, and honestly, more afraid of staying the same than of change, because I'm going to ask that business owner to make a lot of change. So they've got to be open to that.
Okay, so if people are curious and they want to learn more, how do they get a hold of you? How can they find you?
Absolutely. So you can get a hold of me through email, and I'm sure you'll post this, but it's lesa.skipper@eosworldwide.com. And you can also get me on my website, which is also eosworldwide.com/Lesa-Skipper. You can see everything that you need to know there.
Thank you. And we'll definitely drop that into the notes. All right. So last question before we wrap up. What is your advice for people who want to live more intentionally? Maybe they're feeling a little bit stuck or something in their life feels like it's just not working. What is your advice for that first step? What do they need to do to make a change?
The first step is to really acknowledge that a change needs to be made, even if you don't know what that change is. You don't have to have all the answers at once. It can come little by little. And really, one of my favorite things to do, and I truly do believe this is a Brene Brown quote, "The path from your head to your heart is through your hand." So just take a piece of paper and a pen and start just writing whatever you're thinking. Get it out of your head. It has so much more power here than it does on a piece of paper. If you can get it out of here and onto something that is tangible but can't hurt you, it's just a piece of paper, you can see it more clearly. So that's the first thing that I would have you do. And then I would have you figure out a way to find the new path, which means you have to accept the path you're on. You have to see the gift in it. I could sit at home and be really upset that my husband's cognitive ability is shrinking every day. I could, but that's not how I want to live. So, what is the gift in this? And for me, the gift is that I get to give my husband the life he deserves to have, even when he can't choose exactly what he needs. And so I get the gift of knowing that sooner rather than later, because there are drugs that can help. And I get the gift of recognizing that my impact on our marriage is going to change, but be good.
Thank you so much for sharing. All right, Lesa, I'm so sad for this to end, but it's been amazing chatting with you today. And thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate you so much.
My pleasure. And I love all the work that you're doing with empowered families. And I definitely want to further your cause in any way I can.
Thanks, Lesa.
Absolutely.
Thanks for tuning in to Mpowered Living. I hope today's conversation sparked some inspiration and gave you tools to live more intentionally in your family, work, and life. If you enjoyed our episode today, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an inspiring story or actionable takeaway. And if you know someone who would love this episode, share it with them, because living an intentional life is better when we do it together. Until next time, remember, the life you want doesn't happen by chance. It happens by choice. Let's keep creating it one step at a time.